the duodenum is basically the first 10 inches of the small intestine. So the small intestine, you can see the duodenum here. It's a tube. And the tube is about 20 feet long, about an inch in diameter. But we're just talking about the first 10 or so inches shown here in this picture. So look at this picture for a second. You're looking at the abdominal cavity where the duodenum is, but they've removed a lot of internal organs, so you can see the duodenum kind of in the back of the body wall. So here's some things you should know. Well, that's the inferiorvena cava. That's the spleen. They remove the stomach. To remove the stomach, you got to cut here, the end of the esophagus, and you got to cut here, basically the beginning of the duodenum. So the duodenum begins here, 10 inches later, a little bend, and it ends there. Okay. They also cut away the transverse colon. So, yeah, like I said, they cut the liver, the biggest solid organ, will fill this whole area. And those little veins that are cut are actually hepatic veins draining blood from liver back to the inferior vena cava. And this kind of inverted tobacco pipe right here is the pancreas, this gland that kind of is nestled in the C-shaped duodenum. So that's where it is. As you can see, it's mostly retroperitoneal. The stomach is intraperitoneal. It's in the body cavity. So when it continues on with this first part of the duodenum, D1, you don't got, I'm not going to ask you the different parts, but there are different parts. The whole thing's duodenum. It goes retroperitoneal. I would say note for D2, this part that descends, this structure here, that's important. All right, so let me go back a little bit. You got the stomach. All right, and you got these longitudinal folds. On today's quiz anyways, I did quiz you on it. In the future, it's called rugae, longitudinal folds. It's continuous with the duodenum, goes retroperitoneal, it's kind of C-shaped thing. All right, so this second part here, well, first of all, I should mention, you know, these folds allow the food, the chyme, to slosh back and forth. And what keeps the acidic chyme in the stomach is the pyloric sphincter. But if the acidic chyme is to pass through to the next part of the digestive tract, you know, get through here, a few mils at a time, that's the duodenum. And so the duodenum is a very important part of the digestive tract that receives secretions from accessory organs, namely pancreas, shown in this picture, and the liver, which was removed. Okay? So that hepatopancreatic ampulla, there's a little, I'm going to exaggerate the shape, there's like a little nipple-shaped structure in that second part. It goes by different names. I named it here the hepatopancreatic ampulla. I think on your study guide I have it named major duodenal papilla. This thing right there. So look for that. And also in the Atlas of Anatomy, it's called major duodenal papilla, but you might see it called different names. We're going to go with that one. And it's important because that structure receives the ducts from the liver and the pancreas. We'll get into the biliary system later, but there's a duct. That green thing I drew, it's the bile duct, carries bile, right? There's a duct from the pancreas that shares that papilla. It's called the main pancreatic duct. So both of those ducts empty their digestive juices into the duodenum at the major duodenal papilla. Let's remember, there's a muscular sphincter inside that nipple-shaped papilla that has to relax. So there's a little sphincter relaxes when the hormone CCK makes it relax, right? Talked about CCK before. Look it up if you forgot. CCK also makes the gallbladder contract, which squeezes the bile, moves it, but you better relax that sphincter so there's no resistance to the bile seeping in here. Both things dumped in there. So the pancreas and the liver secrete their digestive juices into the duodenum. So when chyme is received by the duodenum, there's the mucosa is folded. There's these spiral circular folds. I'll show you another picture. It's kind of like and it's not a smooth surface. So that those circular folds have a name. You can actually call them circular folds. And I have this thing I drew here. Let me see if I can. The fancy name is plica circularis. That basically means circular folds. Okay. And it forces the chyme to spiral through slowly. So it increases the contact time with the mucosa so that the digestive juices can start to do their work. There's some more pictures of the duodenum. Turn the lights off so we can see it a little better. The picture on the left, what you've done here is, if you take an inventory, I got liver and gallbladder there, okay. And then you can see the duodenum there, you can see pancreas there, and spleen. I always tell students, just remember, liver on the right, spleen on the left. Right, left, okay. So here is the beginning of the duodenum. There's the end of the duodenum. The next part of the small intestine is called jejunum, then ileum. The end of the ileum is right there. Okay. So look where they cut the end of the duodenum, or if you want to call it beginning of the jejunum, same difference. They cut it right there so you can see how the mesentery wraps around it. So this mesentery has been cut. You just cut the digestive tract. You just removed it. Imagine if you had a 20-foot python in a cloth bag, and then you gather up the cloth bag at the top with the python on the bottom. Okay, so in my analogy, the python represents the intestinal tract. And where I gather up the cloth bag, like they do here, that's the root of the mesentery. You're supposed to know that. Okay. On the picture over here, it's a deeper dissection. They removed a lot more. You see if you're awake this morning. Does this picture show the liver? Is it there? No, it's gone. Good, you're awake. Would be there. There it is, liver gone. Do you see the spleen in this picture? It's gone too. Good. Do you see the pancreas? Yes, pancreas is there. It's right here. Do you see the duodenum? Yes. There's the duodenum. Okay. The root of the mesenteric, that's right here. See where they cut on the back body wall? That's the root of the mesenteric where you cut if you want to remove it. Okay? So you can see how the peritoneum is this lining here, and you can see how the duodenum, for the most part, is retroperitoneal. What about the stomach? Is the stomach intra or retro? Intra. Okay. What about pancreas? Intra or retro? Retro. Okay. What about abdominal aorta and inferior vena cava? Look at this illustration. Intra or retro? Retro. So there's a lot of things that are behind the posterior body wall. That's why these pictures help. You know, you can see what's intra and what's not. Here's another picture. This picture is kind of the one we looked at before. This one we haven't looked at. I like this one. They show the end of the stomach. See how the folds are longitudinal? What do you call them? Rugae. But then it changes to these spiral folds. What do you call those? The plica circularis. There's that major duodenal papilla. It receives the secretions of green tube, bile duct. You can call it common bile duct if you want. You can remove the common and just call it bile duct. I see that in a lot of books. Another one is the main pancreatic duct. The major duodenal papilla, they share it. Oh, the other thing to note, the other anatomy to note, the superior mesenteric artery and vein, they go over the duodenum. Always look for that. Superior mesenteric artery and vein. So it's like, those two, they always go over the duodenum. I emphasize that because you don't want to confuse it with the inferior mesenteric. Okay, this one, the superior one goes over. So, these two here are the superior mesenteric. A and V. So two structures, they have the same name, superior mesenteric. We'll do more blood vessels coming up. For now, let's continue on with more pictures. Again, always look for superior mesenteric going over duodenum. It's a good landmark. Lights off here. On this picture we just looked at, there's the superior mesenteric artery and vein going over the duodenum. And on this picture, there they are again, going over the duodenum. Okay, this picture also shows another blood vessel we got to talk about, all the branches of the celiac trunk. We'll get there. Okay, but for now, there's superior mesenteric coming off. It comes off the abdominal aorta. So I'm going to erase this. Here's abdominal aorta. Now the abdominal aorta is the part of the aorta after it enters and goes through the diaphragm at around the level of T12. So in my drawing here, imagine that around the level of T12. Now these two branches coming off are the renal arteries, right and left. The end of the abdominal aorta is when it bifurcates, right here, at about the level of T12. And it bifurcates into the two common iliac arteries, as you already know. So, oh, duh. I think I said one thing and wrote another. Thank you. T12 makes no sense. Very good, thank you. Yeah, I'm done. Now, the first branch, now there's 3 single branches that come off the abdominal aorta. They're not paired. And the first one that comes off, at around the level of T12, is, call number 1 here, is the celiac trunk. I just draw it as a little circle. So, on this picture, it's right there. Okay, now the second one coming off, you can't see it. It's back there somewhere. It's about the same level as the renal artery, but call number 2 here. Okay, that's where the superior mesenteric artery comes off, where I drew number 2. And the third branch that comes off close to the bifurcation at the end, down here, is the inferior mesenteric artery. Call number 3. And basically, branches of these 3 branches supply all the blood to your digestive tract. So we'll talk about all of them. But for now, I just put a bunch of pictures together to show you that the superior mesenteric artery and vein, they always go over the duodenum. Let's continue on. Here is the superior mesenteric artery, SMA, pointing to both. There it is. Okay. I mean, that's a branch of it, really. I can point to either of these. There's the superior one. There's the superior one there. If this is the superior mesenteric, well, what do you think that one is? The inferior, right? It's inferior. So, yeah, that's it. Okay. Okay, you got to orient yourself here. This is looking at the duodenum from like a posterior view. Here's the duodenum right there. Here's the beginning of it, and there's the end of it. So these 2 are superior mesenteric artery and vein going over the duodenum from a posterior view. Okay. Here's a picture showing you stomach and duodenum. Can you spot the superior mesenteric artery and vein? Give you a second. Right there. Always look for it, because I am. Notice the folds. Rugae, plica. I can continue on and go back and talk about celiac trunk. In this picture here, you see the big dome-shaped muscle called the diaphragm. And we see how the inferior vena cava, it kind of has its opening way up here at around the level of T8. Midway through, the opening for the esophagus is at about the level of T10. And the opening for the abdominal aorta is at around the level of around T12. And what you can see, you have 2 branches coming off. So you should already know what they are. The first one is celiac trunk. What's the second one? Superior mesenteric. Yeah, and you can see them on this picture here. First one coming off, celiac trunk. Second one coming off is going to be superior mesenteric. Therefore, what's this one? Inferior mesenteric, okay? So never confuse superior and inferior. If you see you're close to the bifurcation, you know it's inferior. Okay? So don't make that mistake. All right, so let's talk about all the branches of the celiac trunk you got to know. This is a good picture to study, because as soon as it comes off, there's all these branches. Like, you got to know all of them. Talking about blood supply to the digestive tract. So I'll just draw a celiac trunk here. There's that aorta, the first branch coming off, boom. I'll call it number 1, celiac trunk. Now there's a big branch coming off and it goes to the left where the spleen is. It goes to the spleen. Right there. Boom, there's spleen. Spleen gets a lot of blood supply. That artery is called splenic artery. So that's easy. It goes off to the left, to the spleen. Let's just call it splenic artery. There's another branch kind of going up and to the left, and it follows the lesser curvature of the stomach. This branch here, it's called the left gastric, going kind of up and off to the left. Kind of like this. Left gastric. Artery follows the lesser curvature of the stomach. Okay, there's a branch coming off the celiac trunk that goes off to the right. This one is called the common hepatic artery. Common hepatic artery. So that name common means it's going to branch. It's common to a couple of other things. So I follow common hepatic. There's this first branch coming off and going down to the duodenum into the stomach. It's called gastroduodenal artery. This first branch coming off and going down. Gastroduodenal artery. Coming off the common hepatic. The second branch coming off common hepatic is also going to follow the lesser curvature of the stomach from the right side. It's called the right gastric, and it forms an arterial anastomosis with the one on the left. They're continuous with each other. So I'm on number 6, that one there. Right gastric. Artery. If you finish following that artery, it's going to go right to the liver. And at that point, you can call it proper hepatic artery. Number 7. Sometimes books just call it hepatic artery, not proper hepatic artery. Either's fine. Just don't confuse it with common hepatic coming right off. As soon as common hepatic starts giving off all these branches, then what's left over, just call it hepatic artery or proper hepatic artery. But the only two branches I gave you to know are gastroduodenal and the right gastric. Okay, those are the major ones. Now we're not done yet. If you look at, kind of hard to see, but gastroduodenal is going to give off a branch that follows the greater curvature of the stomach here. It's called the right gastroomental artery. So right here. Call it number 8. Right gastroomental artery. It's got an anastomose with one on the left that comes off the splenic. You kind of meet up right there. Call this number 9. It's the last one. Left gastroomental artery. All arteries here. All right, so we sketched it out. Let's kind of look at the pictures. Great pictures in your atlas. It's really easy to learn when you have good pictures. Celiac trunk, the first branch going off to the left. partially out of the view of the stomach. It's going to the left, spleen, so it's the splenic artery, right? Now this one coming up, following the lesser curvature of the stomach, left gastric artery. Okay. Let's go to the right side, celiac trunk. This first branch is common hepatic artery. First branch coming off and going down is gastroduodenal. Second branch coming off, right gastric artery. And what goes to the liver is the proper hepatic artery, taking oxygen-rich blood to the massive liver. All right, the branches down here, this branch coming off gastroduodenal is right gastroomental, and then here's left gastroomental. So look where I put, the sticker, or I point closer to the right or closer to the left. I won't point right in the middle, it's too confusing. I'll point closer to the one side or the other, so it's clear if it's right or left. Right or left's important in this anatomy. So in this picture, they removed most of the stomach so you can have a full view, identify. Splenic artery. What about the blue one? Take a guess. Splenic vein? Yeah. Okay. So what would you call this one? Common hepatic. Yeah, and the first branch coming off? Gastroduodenal. Second branch coming off? Right gastric, and then the rest of it going to the liver? Proper hepatic artery. What about these ones down here? Superior mesenteric artery and the superior mesenteric vein going over the duodenum. So I put the two pictures side by side just so you can kind of see, compare, and contrast. And here's a close-up picture I like to use to see things nicely. Once again, they're splenic, left gastric, okay, common hepatic, gastroduodenal, right gastric, proper hepatic artery. So just rehearse it a few times or get it down. Some of you have it down already. All right, moving on. Pancreas. The anatomy is not so much to look at. It's just a gland. The physiology, there's some things they need to talk about. So this gland is about 15 centimeters long. I showed you where it is. It's kind of nestled with the duodenum, retroperitoneal. It has endocrine and exocrine function. Let's remember that endocrine means hormones secreted into the bloodstream. And I talked about that in that chapter. So you might want to review insulin and glucagon. Remember those? We need those for digestion too, right? For regulating blood sugar. I'll talk mostly about the exocrine function today. The exocrine glands will empty into that main pancreatic duct I mentioned earlier. So the juices that it secretes, call it pancreatic juice, that enters that pancreatic duct. The shape of the pancreas, like I said, is an inverted tobacco pipe. Well, anyways, here it is there. The main pancreatic duct is dissected out in white. And there it is there. So what I want you to know for the function is that that pancreatic juice is a brew of bicarbonate juice and pancreatic enzymes. Different things, different functions. Bicarbonate is a base, like Tums, neutralized acid, right? That's a very important function for the pancreas. You have to neutralize all the acidic chyme so you don't get an ulcer here. The pancreatic enzymes form the chemical digestion. You got enzymes from the pancreas that digest everything you can eat. Proteins, lipids, carbs, nucleic acids. That's everything. So you emphasize that point. It's about 1 liter to 1.5 liters daily. It's a watery juice that's a mix of bicarb and enzymes. Here are all the enzymes. Okay? And the one I'll emphasize are the proteases, just to use as an example of how they work in the digestive tract. So in this picture, the pancreas releases all the juices here, but they're released, again, the theme is release it in an inactive form. Don't let it activate until it reaches the lumen of the digestive tract. Otherwise, you're going to auto-digest on the way out. You don't want that. So release in an inactive form. That's kind of the key here. Let's remember this is the molecular formula for bicarbonate. You should know that from the previous test. We want that to neutralize the acidic chyme. But all these enzymes I'm talking about here, the theme is for the pancreatic enzymes, release them in an inactive form. Activate them in the lumen. So what you got here is a membrane-bound enteropeptidase in the lumen that activates this first one, trypsinogen into trypsin. Membrane-bound enteropeptidase, make sure I spelled that right, peptidase. Oh, peptidase with a T. It'll activate the first one. It's in the lumen. It's membrane bound. It's in the lumen. So you got trypsinogen. That's an inactive protease. It's not activated until it gets to the lumen where this enzyme is, and it becomes the active form trypsin, which can digest proteins. And this is the first protease that's activated, and it's used to activate other proteases, as you can see in the figure, chymotrypsin and carboxypeptidase. If you look microscopically inside the pancreas, which we've done before, but we didn't look at this structure. You've got this kind of, they call it asommus, describes like means mushroom shape. And I want you to connect the hormones, CCK and secretion, how they target different cells in that structure. You're either going to target the duct cells or these acinar cells. So the duct cells, I'll use the color blue here. They form the duct, but they have a function though. But let's first mention these acinar cells. And what you got here is secretion. Let's remember, that hormone is only released when acid reaches the duodenum. So in response to acid, when the food you're eating reaches the duodenum, that's the trigger for secretin. Secretin did a lot of things. It stimulates the liver to produce bile, but when it targets the pancreas, it targets the duct cells. And then the duct cells will release bicarb-rich juice. The other thing I have on the slide is CCK. That's released in response to fat, lipid in your diet that you eat. Okay, so then in response to the lipid or fat, CCK is released. That's a hormone that, well, when it targets the pancreas, it stimulates these acinar cells to release enzyme-rich juice. Because one of the enzymes, it's a lipase that digests fat. So distinguish duct cells from acinar cells is, I guess, is the point. These are acinar. So far, that's the exocrine function. So basically what I'm trying to show you is that when you have fat, you need to digest it. CCK is released. You get the enzyme-rich juice. That'll help kind of balance the fat digestion. If you have a lot of acid, you need to neutralize it. Secretin is released in response, and you get a lot of bicarb-rich juice, and you get acid neutralization. So you're trying to balance that. Now, the third thing I want to mention is the endocrine function, just to remind you. I already mentioned about the secretin and the CCK. That's exocrine function. Those duct and acinar cells all drain into the main pancreatic duct. But these pancreatic islets, I don't know if you remember studying that. I think you should. That wasn't too hard. They exist outside the structure. How'd you do that microscope exercise? And you had to find it. Remember that? Somebody had a tough time, and somebody found it immediately. Those little islets. Well, anyways, go back and look. Yeah, beta cells, you had alpha cells. They secrete the insulin and the glucagon. Okay, so for example, beta cells secrete insulin. So insulin doesn't use the duct, right? It's endocrine function. It gets into the bloodstream, right? So they enter a bloodstream. So insulin enters the bloodstream, and so remember what insulin does. It targets adipose and skeletal muscle, and it helps lower the blood sugar. I think I have that on this slide to help you remember. So GIP is released in response to carb, right? And then let's move right here. So you get carb in your diet. The hormone that I talked about last time is GIP. So GIP targets, for example, beta cells to release insulin. That'll help regulate the blood sugar. So that's an endocrine function. So that's the function of the liver, helps you digest. And we'll move on to the liver unless there's any questions on the pancreas. All right, well, the liver is the largest solid organ of the body. It's huge. That's what I say first. It's huge. About 2% of your body weight. It's got a nice brown color. It receives venous blood returning from the GI tract. That's one major thing. It's receiving venous blood. The only thing I've taught you so far, I think, is that veins return blood to the heart. Now I'm telling you, veins return blood to the liver. Okay, it's a portal circulation. Okay, so in your digestive tract, you eat a meal. Okay, a big plate of food, Thanksgiving dinner, whatever it is, goes through your guts, goes through the intestinal capillaries, and all of those capillaries from the intestine and the colon and the spleen, they don't go to inferior vena cava and back to the heart. They go to the liver first, so you can process the nutrient-laden blood. All right. However, does that blood have oxygen in it? No, you would have had gas exchange at the intestinal capillaries. So this venous blood is oxygen poor, returning into this portal vein. Okay, but it does have the products of digestion. So the liver can be a storehouse for glycogen, and also for digestion, it secretes bile, which is an important agent for digesting fats in particular. So the gallbladder is there to help store the bile between meals, basically. Here's a picture of the liver, and So I've got a picture of the body there. It's basically mostly on the right side. There it is, removed from the body. And you have lobes of the liver. So there it is, that's an anterior view. Basically what you got there is big old, just kind of give you a rough shape there. Big old liver. Now it has some coverings there. There's some peritoneum that covers it. Visceral peritoneum. Exaggerate this. All right, this is basically visceral peritoneum. They call these here that form a crown, like the coronary ligaments. That's not in your study guide, so I won't put it. But when they kind of meet here, this part is called the falciform ligament. You got to know that. And you see like this bare area where there's no covering? There's no covering because they kind of merge here and then they form the falciform. And down here, this round part is called the ligamentum parries, which literally means round ligament. And inside of there is an obliterated blood vessel. It used to be your umbilical vein. So that's why they say here in the picture, contains obliterated umbilical vein. But now it's just a ligament because you're not using it anymore. Obliterated umbilical vein. Obliterated because it's not being used. It's just a nice ligament now. It's the ligamentum parries down here. Okay, so know that. Falciform ligament, ligamentum parries. This is important because that ligament, it's cut here, but I mean, this is right behind your ab wall. So this is anchoring to the inside of your anterior abdominal wall. Anchors liver to anterior ab wall. Also, peeking down here, little green sac, gallbladder. This big lobe on the right is simply the right lobe. The smaller one is the left lobe. There's two other lobes that you can't see. You have to look at a different view. So this is the anterior view. So here it is by itself, and here it is. Well, let's look at a couple of these here. I'm pointing to the round ligament on the bottom. But what if I asked you to identify this or that? What would you put? Falciform, which kind of goes down and ends there. So, boom, round ligament. You can see it was the umbilical vein, pops out there. Here's two umbilical arteries. They come up, pop out that same hole. What is that? Don't think too hard. Belly button. From the inside, right? Belly button from the inside. Okay? I mean, let's remember what the umbilical cord is, right? It's coming out your belly button. So, what does it contain? It contains one umbilical vein, two umbilical arteries. You just go punch out there. I can remember, I'll show you that in a cadaver. So this is the front of your body wall. This is the inside of your front, not your back. Okay, this is the anterior body wall. So this is attached to the liver in the front. Okay, when I remove the body wall, I gotta cut that falciform ligament off. Continue on with the liver. Here is an inferior view. So to orient you, well, like for example, pretend you're in lab and you're working with a model here. So they put our model looks like that. Okay, but this is kind of how it sits in the body with the stand facing you. But that's the view you're seeing there. Here's the inferiorvena cava. So there's the inferiorvena cava there. Okay, there's the right lobe, there's the left lobe. Now there's some stuff here. Let's, this is much. All right, for this view, kind of like this thing going on. No, I drew them both kind of the same shape. I shouldn't have done that. This one's more like a little tail shape. This one's more like a square. Maybe I should draw this one a little more tail looking. I'll do that a little bit more like that. Well, I'm just being general here, but okay, there's a little opening here, but on this side, you got the round ligament from this view, the ligamentum teres. This lobe and this lobe are called caudate quadrate. Caudate means tail, four-sided one, quadrate. Quadrate lobe, right next to gallbladder. So looking underneath, this is the left lobe, this is the right lobe. Always remember, gallbladder is closer to the right lobe. This opening is called the porta hepatis, which means doorway to the liver. There's a lot of stuff coming in and going out. Hepatic always refers to liver. Anyway, here's the gallbladder. It kind of narrows to this like little duct here. It's going to merge with the common hepatic duct. So I'm going to kind of okay, so that thing coming out of the liver, that's our bile duct. Okay, that first one there. This is a secretion. It's produced by the liver. So bile is coming out of that tube. So, you know, this way, it's coming out. You know where it goes. It goes to the duodenum. The oxygen-rich blood being delivered to the liver, you know, it's proper hepatic artery. So I'll draw another blood vessel. Blood coming in, oxygen-rich blood, that's proper hepatic artery. O2-rich blood. The other vein that delivers blood to the liver is the portal vein, or hepatic portal vein. It's a vein, I'll draw in blue. So blood's going in. We just call it portal vein. Portal vein right there. Those three things enter, exit. It's called the doorway to the liver. So know those three things. Look for them in this area called, I said porta hepatic. Change that C to an S. Sorry about that. Porta hepatis is usually what I see it called. And these three things that I drew here are kind of contents of porta hepatis. That's my next slide. Contents of porta hepatis with an S. Portal vein, proper hepatic artery, and the bile duct. Be able to identify those things. Very important. This is very unusual. It's like the liver has a dual blood supply. This and that. The portal vein, which has not oxygen-rich blood, but nutrient-laden blood. And proper hepatic artery, which has the oxygen-rich blood. Both are delivering blood to the liver. So this is kind of like these two vessels are like what the one umbilical vein accomplishes. The one umbilical vein, if you remember in fetal circulation, had oxygen-rich blood from mom, as well as all the nutrients from mom that baby needs. So now it's like the liver, it's like these two vessels to accomplish that task. Anyways, you gotta know them both. This one's important because the liver needs to process all the food you ate. And of course, you also need oxygen-rich blood supply. It's about 75-25, 75% portal blood, 25% arterial blood. Okay, and here is inferiorvena cava. You have a dual blood supply, but you have a single venous drainage system. All the hepatic veins will dump into this structure here, inferiorvena cava. So let me draw one little branch going into it. Hepatic vein. It's a drainage system, so blood's going out. And this is inferiorvena cava. So don't confuse hepatic vein with portal vein, because one is supplying blood and one is draining blood. They have very different functions, even though they're both veins. You got the two views side by side, unlabeled so you can study. So there's some blank pictures for you so you can study. So let's talk about the gallbladder itself, which stores the bile. The gallbladder is just that. It's a bladder. It's a pear-shaped sac. That's what a bladder is. And like I said, it lies along the right edge of the quadrate lobe on the right side. It's a bluish-green color. It can hold a little bit of bile, about 30 to 60 ml. Okay, so I'm going to erase this picture here. So let's look at this picture here. Well, maybe I kind of skipped over this one. This one I put in because I want you to see its association with the liver. They cut a large portion of the liver away. This is part of the right lobe. There's the gallbladder right there. There's the duodenum, there's transverse colon. So you can see where it is in the body. Okay, but what I want to talk about is the biliary system, because the liver produces the bile, but some of that is diverted to the gallbladder. The liver will produce about 900 ml of bile a day. Of that 900, about 450 of it is produced between meals. So that bile, because you're not eating, the sphincter's shut, it's going to backwash into the gallbladder. There's no CCK when you're not eating. There's too much resistance there. So the bile that's produced, it'll backwash into the gallbladder. Okay. Divert it to gallbladder. Function of the gallbladder, it'll store it, it'll concentrate it. Okay. So look at the absorptive surface of the gallbladder. Store/concentrates bile. That's the key. This is not just any old bile. The bile from the gallbladder is concentrated. It makes it very effective at digesting fats. Okay. So liver, bile directly from the liver, you can call it dilute bile. Bile from the gallbladder is concentrated bile. The bile that actually reaches the duodenum is a mixture of dilute and concentrated. In a day, there's about 500 ml bile that reaches duodenum daily. So that 500 ml, it's a mix of dilute and concentrated bile. All right. So between meals, you're not eating, you're making bile. It kind of goes down here. Open the sphincter is closed. It's going to backwash. There's instead of a valve, there's like a spiral thing that allows things to get in but not out easily. And so it just kind of gets here, and you concentrate the bile. And while you eat, CCK will make this thing contract. It'll squeeze the bile out and move it along this duct and relax the sphincter in there so the concentrated bile can reach. But let's talk about all of these ducts. They all have different names. Yeah.
So the bile is produced all the time, and if you're not eating, then it goes back to the gallbladder. It goes.
Yeah.
Then it goes back because the sphincter over there is closed to.
That's right. Yes, that is correct.
So only the liver produces bile, right? But it's stored.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, the gallbladder doesn't produce it, it just stores it. You are correct. If you look at the top there, you have these two here. They come from different lobes of the liver. They call it right hepatic duct, left hepatic duct. You're carrying the bile. You know that. And they merge to form, it's called common hepatic duct. We have gallbladder here. This is called the cystic duct. And it merges with the common hepatic duct to form what we've been calling this morning the bile duct. And the bile duct is the one that will go to major duodenal papilla and drain into the duodenum when there's CCK, during a meal. So here's the two pictures, side by side. And no matter what you're looking at, what picture you're studying, you should always be able to orient yourself, because if you just remember this one simple thing, the gallbladder is on the right. If the gallbladder is on the right, what's this one? Right hepatic duct, left hepatic duct, common hepatic duct, cystic duct, bile duct, portal vein, hepatic artery, or proper hepatic artery. Gallbladder, that's the right side. Therefore, right hepatic duct, left hepatic duct, common hepatic duct, cystic duct, bile duct, portal vein, proper hepatic artery. Can't see it there, can't see it there. It's a little blurry, I think we can do it. There's the gallbladder, that's the right side. Right hepatic duct, left hepatic duct, common hepatic duct, cystic duct, bile duct, portal vein, proper hepatic artery, right? Inferiorvena cava, hepatic vein. So get fast, know it well. You have no problems. In terms of looking at the liver microscopically, under the microscope you're going to see the organization is like these little bricks called liver lobules. If you look at one little brick, it's actually a hexagon. In the middle is a central vein. Okay. On the corners, there's some anatomy here, but basically what you got to know is the blood is flowing towards the shower drain, the central vein. And as blood flows towards the middle, all the hepatocytes that are within this lobe, this little lobule, do their work. So you expose all of the liver cells to the blood that has been received by the liver through those two vessels, portal vein, proper hepatic artery. Okay? So once it reaches the shower drain, blood is on the way out. It's going to end up in hepatic vein, inferior vena cava. So all the work has to be done before you get there, because the blood is on the way out. The liver that's produced flows in the opposite direction towards the corners. They're all coming from the corners. Blood flows in, bile flows out. If you look at it under a real microscope, that was just an illustration. Just basically, if you recognize a lobule, the thing in the middle, central vein. The structure on the side we call portal triad. Three things: branches of portal vein, hepatic artery, bile duct. Okay. Here's a good picture that shows. This picture down here is the one I usually teach for most often. Yeah.
The central vein that we are referring, is that the central venule?
Yeah, same thing.
Okay.
It's a venule. So that thing there, basically what you got is a hexagon. Little shower drain in the middle. Again, this is the central vein. But in the corners, you're going to have three structures. You're going to have a branch of proper hepatic artery. I'll use red to symbolize oxygen-rich blood. In each corner, you're going to have a branch of the portal vein supplying the nutrient-laden blood. You're going to have a branch of the bile duct. I'll use green. Anyways, they call the whole thing at any corner, portal triad. And on an illustration like that, I mean, it's easy when it's colored. You should be able to identify one of those three things, right? It's either going to be, contains a little branch of either the hepatic artery, portal vein, or the bile duct. So I made this slide because students commonly confuse portal triad with porta hepatis. Portal triad is referring to these corners of the lobule. The porta hepatis is the underneath side of the liver. Okay, so don't confuse the two. Well, maybe you're confused. Let's unconfuse you. What's that? Of these choices, what's that? Porta hepatis. So, you know, any of these corners is a triad, those three things. Well, if you look at a close-up view, here's some detail that you might not notice. Just let me point it out to you. The liver cells are called hepatocytes, and they're arranged in rows of 2 hepatocytes, the liver cells that do the work of the liver, help process all the food you ate. Of course, you realize anything you stick in your mouth goes to the liver. Okay, if that's the one thing you remember about this class, let it be that. You stick food in your mouth every day, or vitamins, or drugs, or supplements. Anything you stick in your mouth has to go to the liver. You know, vitamin supplements. They're all chemicals. How's the liver going to take it? You may think it's healthy because they market it that way. Oh, look at that label. It's organic. Chemicals. It goes to the liver. Worry about your liver. Okay, talk about it with your doctor. Everything goes to the liver. Every single cell of the liver is exposed to the blood. So let's take care of our liver here. The hepatocytes are arranged in 2 rows of 4. Sorry, rows of 2. So let me draw kind of like this. Just right. Like that. So a little hepatocyte shaped like that. This little gap there. Next to another row of cells. So 2 rows of hepatocytes. And on the slide I say, there's a slide facing out, basolateral side. The side facing in is the apical side. So this side basolateral. The other side apical. So the reason why you have these two rows is because on each side is a sinusoid. The sinusoid is the name of the blood vessel. It's a blood vessel. It's like a capillary. And it's carrying the blood from the branch of the portal vein and the branch of the hepatic artery. So it's a mix of that nutrient-laden blood and oxygen-rich blood. Okay? Portal vein branch. Branch of the hepatic artery. So that blood is flowing by. On either side you have a sinusoid. So the blood's flowing that way, this way, toward the central vein. Once it gets to the central vein, you're on the way out. Notice there's even a gap between the basolateral membrane and the sinusoid. And that, even the gap has a name. It's called the space of Desay. Space of Desay. I'm sure there's some significance to the space of the gap. Just know what it's called. Okay? So in this arrangement, every hepatocyte gets to work. It's exposed to the blood flowing by it. One of the jobs is to produce bile. Bile is produced in these little bile canaliculi. I don't like the way they illustrate it. My understanding is the bile canaliculi is a little gap between the apical membranes. This space here is known as bile canaliculi. It's a gap, not a duct. A gap, not a duct. As it's pictured there, it looks more like a duct. But anyways, these are producing bile. All the bile will be drained out. I don't want to draw this too much, but you can see it here. All the bile is drained out of the little bile canaliculi into this branch of the bile duct, and it will eventually drain out of that biliary system we did earlier, right? Hepatic duct, left hepatic duct, common hepatic duct, cystic duct, that whole blah, blah, blah thing. But anyways, at the microscopic level, this is what you got. Are there any questions on this picture? I know it's a little blurry, I have to zoom in, but identify cell. Hepatocyte, identify. Sinusoid, what is that? Illustrated incorrectly. Bile canaliculi, it's a gap, not a duct, like I drew it. That's my understanding. Okay, well, let's see here. Well, okay, bile. More about bile. What is it? These things, the bile salts are pretty much what's important. The bile salts will make it be able to break up your fat into smaller and smaller droplets for easy digestion. Okay. Big fat droplet, okay? The goal of bile is fat emulsification. Fat emulsification is not true chemical digestion. You're just breaking up the fat globule into smaller droplets. And by doing so, you're going to make more fat molecules available to the lipase that can accomplish the chemical digestion. So fat emulsification, just break up the fat into smaller droplets. The smaller droplets, you expose more fat to the lipase. Lipase is the enzyme that accomplishes the chemical digestion. So how the bile salts work is bile can accomplish the emulsification because the bile salts are two-sided. Okay, we got a hydrophobic side and a hydrophilic side. The hydrophobic side faces the fat. The hydrophilic side faces the watery environment of the digestive tract. So one side's polar, one side's non-polar. Hydrophilic, polar, non-polar. So this dual nature, polar, non-polar, makes it a good emulsifier. You can interact with the fat as well as the watery environment, which is polarized. Here's another picture of it in the book. It's a little better. It shows you big fat globule at the top being broken into smaller fat droplets. That is emulsification, but it's not true chemical digestion. You're just making it more, you just can expose it to the lipase better. Okay. All right, so you see here's a villi of an intestine. These smaller fat droplets can get picked up by the lacteals. Let's remember that these molecules are too big to be absorbed into blood capillaries, but they can be absorbed into lacteals. Okay. So don't confuse emulsification with this. This is chemical digestion of fats, where the lipase, it cleaves off the fatty acids from the triglyceride. Okay? So chemical digestion of fats is the lipase, probably comes from the pancreas. It cleaves off free fatty acids from a glycerol backbone. So this bar in the middle is glycerol. Okay, it's a triglyceride because you have 3 fatty acids that are attached to it. These 2 have been cleaved off in this illustration. Cleaves off fatty acid chains from a triglyceride molecule. Maybe you ate it, maybe it's from your fat stores on your body, but that's chemical digestion. Because it's the free fatty acid, once you cleave it off, it's just a hydrocarbon chain. That can circulate in the bloodstream, it can enter the muscle cell, and your muscles can burn it for fuel. Okay. All right, let's take a break. When we come back, we'll talk about the small intestine.